It found posts that appear to endorse violence by officers or members of the public, show bias against minority groups, use dehumanizing language calling protesters or people of color animal or savages. And the attitude went beyond mere words, a deeper dive into the records of officers here in Philly, where posts were flagged, found that almost 1/3 of those individuals had been subjects of civil rights and brutality complaints, many ending in settlements or verdicts from the plaintiffs. Here in Philadelphia, 10 police officers who, quote, appear to have engaged in explicit bias have been placed on desk duty as the department continues to investigate. Well, I'm wondering, what are the First Amendment rights of the affected police officers? Joining me now is David Hudson. He's a First Amendment scholar and law professor at Belmont University. Professor, those who did the investigation, their standard was to try and determine, does the post erode public trust in policing? And I noticed that the police commissioner here in Philly, in fact, we'll put it up on the screen, here's what he said. He's wondering, when does a police officer's expression of his opinion erode the police department's ability to do its job and maintain the public's trust? In those circumstances, the department is permitted to act. Is that an articulation of the law? In other words, at what point can a police officer be disciplined for his or her speech?
Well, the standard developed by the United States Supreme Court is to balance the public employee's right to speak on matters of public concern against the public employer's right to an efficient, disruptive, free workplace. It's important to realize, well, what it means is that public employees do not lose all of their free speech rights simply because they accept public employment. And they do have the right to speak out on matters of political speech, and they do have the right to offer their opinion. Where it crosses the line is when the police department can show that it has a tangible negative impact on and disrupts close working relationships and harms community relationships with the police.
Let me click through a couple of examples and have you react. Catherine, put up the first one. How many cops does it take to throw a pedophile down the stairs? None. He fell. Is that a joke? Is that something that we should worry about as a society? Is that protected speech?
I think it depends on the context, right? One random post read in context, it may be simply rhetorical hyperbole, it may be a jest. I'd obviously look into it and I would be concerned about it, but I'm not going to go so far as to say that the officer doesn't have any free speech rights in that circumstance.
How about this? It's a good day for a chokehold.
Again, I would speak to the officer. I would want to determine whether that's just one isolated post, or does that officer have a history of excessive force complaints, or has that officer been accused of police brutality? I'm not going to go so far as to say that's not protected speech.
Hope that this piece of S is dealt with street justice or just plain karma quickly, hopefully dead by police gunfire. Are they getting progressively worse as I'm showing them to you now?
They're definitely getting progressively worse. That one where you're advocating police violence against a suspect, it would be very hard to justify that. And even under the Pickering balancing test, I would think the police department would have a good argument that that would not be constitutionally protected.
If the Confederate flag is racist, then so is Black History Month.
Well, at the very least, that officer should be sent to diversity training and sensitivity training. Again, I think a lot of this also depends upon whether the officer is posting on his private Facebook page, and is there any indication that the officer indicates that he or she is a police officer or not. That does make a difference in the calculus.
One more. So it's a slide pertaining to Islam, and it sort of mocks Islam as a religion of peace, because I know the print is small, Professor, but on the left side are all instances of terror perpetrated by Muslims. So what is your thought on that?
I would be troubled by it because there are a certain number of Muslims that would be in the community, and the police officer would be responsive to serve and protect all members of the community. If I was defending the officer, I would try to argue that that was a form of political speech and that should be protected.
You know that there's I've read in on this, and I paid particular attention to the comments, including those supportive of law enforcement, and there's a mindset that says, look, these are jokes, these are cops being cops, this is them essentially conveying through their social media feeds that they've got one another's back, and society need not be concerned by the speech, even